Okay, Minister, can I come back to you? When will students return to school? I'm going to ask the question that all parents would like to know.
Yeah, thank you, and it's a very good and pertinent question. So obviously, as you know, from the 16th, we're going to have our students across Greater Sydney in Year 12, with the exception of those hotspot LGAs return. It's also important to note that we do have students who are at school across New South Wales now. Many of our regional communities have had schools continue in the normal way who haven't been impacted by the current outbreak. I think we've made it clear that the learning from home provisions for the other year groups across Greater Sydney will exist until the 28th of August. We are currently working in terms of a return to school plan from beyond that date, talking to stakeholders about what that might look like. We haven't made those decisions yet, Ms. Housos, and I think as the government and the Premier is saying quite strongly, of course we are looking at what we can do after the 28th of August. We'll continue to do that in consultation with health. As I said in my opening remarks, I'm really cognizant of the fact that learning from home is tough, and despite amazing efforts by our school communities and our families, it is challenging. I'm very aware, particularly for our younger students, our kindergarten, year 1, year 2, those formative years are really essential. So I will always advocate for students to be back in the classroom as soon as we can in a safe way. At the moment, we are working through what those return to school plans will look like, but I'm not in a position to hypothesise about dates or when that will be, because that work is still underway, as I'm sure you can appreciate.
Yeah, well, the Premier said this morning at her news conference that the lockdown is likely to be going until the end of October. Is that a likely time frame for when our students are going to return to school?
Well, look, the Premier has also said that a return to school continues to be a key priority of the government. And I think the fact that we've got our Year 12 students coming back in a limited way, but still having access to a school site in Greater Sydney that they don't currently have is a good step forward. We will continue to have those conversations with health about what a return would look like. I know Ms Harrison has already started conversations with key stakeholders again about what that plan could involve, and we're continuing to do that. So I don't want to preempt decisions that are still yet to be made. Obviously, it will be done based in conjunction with health and their advice, as we've done throughout the pandemic. And again, just reiterate that we do have students who are still at school across regional communities. So we are dealing with different levels of impact of COVID right across New South Wales at this point in time.
Yes, but Minister, the parents in particular across Greater Sydney and across the affected LGAs want to get an indication. Are you working towards the rest of this term being it from home? Are you working towards the end of the year being from home? What indication can you give them more than just the conversations are happening?
Yeah, well, can I say, certainly my understanding of how most of our parents are feeling is that they're pretty keen to have their children back at school as soon as they can. And that's a view that I share. I've been quite open that it's my responsibility and prerogative as Education Minister to do or provide advice in terms of what I think is best for teaching and learning. And clearly that happens in the classroom, but we need to do it in a safe and sensible way. We need to do it in conjunction with health. The Premier has already indicated that this is a priority area of government. I also think looking at more broadly how things go in the general community, those vaccination rates that obviously we need to see increase, and I think there's some really positive signs in that space as well. But what I don't want to do is give misleading information. We are absolutely actively looking at what are our options to return to school, but the timeframes in relation to that will be based on advice and consultations with others across all of government, and in particular health, in terms of what we can do and when.
Yes, but Minister, surely you understand the frustration of parents. Surely you understand that they too are keen to get an idea of how long this is going to go for, and just for them, for the government to be upfront with them. Is it going to be another month? Is it going to be until October? Is it going to be until the end of the year? Surely you can give them more indication than wait until the 28th of August and we're having conversations.
Well, I would just repeat what I said before, in that I'm very aware of how challenging learning from home is for a lot of families, and that obviously as Education Minister, I want kids back in the classroom as soon as we can make that happen. I say that very openly and have had relayed that on many different occasions publicly as well. So we will be in a position to tell parents what to expect, within the coming weeks. We are working on that, of course, with our stakeholders. We know that we're learning from home until the 28th of August. That is still 2.5 weeks away. And like we've done in other instances throughout the pandemic, Ms Housos, we've been able to provide updated advice to schools and parent communities in advance of those dates. So we'll continue to work with health, with our stakeholders to map out what a return to school might look like. And of course, we will be doing so based on the parameters and advice that we get from public health, which again, I think is in line with community and parent sentiment. I think parents, want their children to be back at school, but they also want a safe return to school. And they're the things that we need to make sure we work through. That's what we've done for our Year 12 students coming back on the 16th of August. It's the same approach that we will take for a broader return to school.
So, Minister, you talked about a safe return to schools. Can I ask you then, is there a number of teachers, a proportion of teachers that will need to be vaccinated in order for schools to return?
I'll get Ms Harrison to talk about teacher vaccinations, but I'll just say, firstly, we in our public school system, we've got about 51%, I believe is the figure that I've been given, of our teachers who are age 40 and over. So they have been eligible for vaccinations for some time. And of course, with the updated health advice, anyone over the age of 18 can get the AstraZeneca vaccine. We are encouraging all of our teachers to go and get vaccinated with whichever vaccine is available to them. And again, I've made very public comments about that. Teachers that I've been speaking to are keen to get vaccinated. And so in line with the rest of the community, we want our teachers to go and get vaccinated. We're actively encouraging them to do that. I know Ms Harrison has been communicating with our workforce about that as well. But in terms of percentages and numbers of teachers that are vaccinated, I'll just get Ms Harrison to provide a bit more information.
Before we go to Ms Harrison, can I ask you then, what are the criteria for schools returning? Is it a proportion of teachers vaccinated? What are going to be the criteria that you will allow students to return to face-to-face learning?
Well, I think there's a number of elements that we need to consider. First and foremost, it's the public health advice in relation to what a safe return to school looks like. And some of the committee members will no doubt recall when we had to make the decision to move to learning from home, which was not done lightly and not done easily. Part of the concern coming from Dr. Kerry Chan and others is just the huge amount of movement that we have in our school system. We have literally every day across Greater Sydney, hundreds of thousands of students, tens of thousands of teachers. When you talk about the full cohort, add the parents to that as well, as we have during normal times. So it was about minimising the movement in the community. And I think Dr. Chan and the Premier both covered that quite extensively in media conferences in relation to those decisions. I think also, if you look at what we've done in terms of our levels, the 4 levels that we've set with our schools for how we manage schools in a COVID safe way when we do have a return to face-to-face learning, that's been available to all our school communities across the state from the beginning of this term. Very clearly sets out some of the extra measures that we'll be putting in place that we haven't had before. Things like mask wearing, minimising extra adults on site, making sure that you stagger drop-off on pickup times for our Year 12 students next week, minimise the mixing between students, for example. So there already is a lot of information and work that has been done in terms of what does a COVID safe return look like, how do we do that? But obviously we'll continue to be guided by health in terms of a bigger return, what that might look like, how we can make it work for which student groups. Like I said, I'm very cognizant of the early years and those students, but they're all the discussions that are happening as we speak and will continue to happen over the coming days as we work through what our options are, guided by the health advice.